Alrighty, so if you can believe it, we are now down to the last month of the MLS regular season. We are 1 month away before decision day is going to happen, and as we head into the stretch run, we're getting to a point where the playoff race is definitely heating, the Supporter Shield race is heating as well, and not to mention there are also teams that are fighting for their lives in terms of trying to stay off elimination. Last week we didn't really see any team got eliminated, despite the fact that there was a chance that a lot of these teams had a chance to get eliminated. Well, actually, I take that back. We did see one team that got eliminated. I believe Toronto FC got eliminated, and I still will need to do a moving forward series talking about them as well. But nevertheless, yeah, this is another weekend where we have a full slate of MLS action. But what's I like about this weekend compared to what we've seen in these last couple of weeks, especially during the summer, we're finally back to having some matinee game happen on Saturday. It feels like it's been a long time since we have had some of these matinee games, and it's understandable why we don't usually have matinee games during the summer because it's way too hot to play in some of these matinee games that's happening in the summer. But nevertheless, the first game we're going to talk about is really a matinee game. I mean, this is the earliest kickoff we have ever had this season, and probably the earliest kickoff an MLS game could happen. Besides what we saw in the MLS back tournament, where we saw games that kicked off at 9 a.m. Eastern time, 6 a.m. Pacific. Yeah, I'm glad the league doesn't do that anymore. But this game kicks off at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. It's NYCFC versus Charlotte. NYCFC 15-5-9, whereas Charlotte is 17-2-11. And Charlotte, of course, trying to break the record for the most wins in a row doing the post shootout era. They're currently tied with the Seattle Sounders that was set back in 2018 of this 9 game winning streak. And if they're going to do it, they have to play against an NYCFC team that not only have some confidence lately, but this is a team that again, when it comes to facing against tough opponent, especially when they're playing at home, they're always up for this one. But when you look at the head-to-head matchup, Charlotte actually has been very well with NYCFC, or they have done very well at least with NYCFC. 5-1-1 is their all-time record. So if history goes to Charlotte favor, they would break the record for the longest winning streak. And if that is the case, I'll definitely will do a video about it. I'll probably still do a video of it nevertheless because of the way that we haven't seen a team reach 9 wins in a row since the Seattle Sounders did back in 2018. And with this winning streak, I mean, this team is rise all the way up near the top of the standings right now. And do not be surprised, they could potentially rise all the way up to the top of the standing and maybe even win the Supporter Shield. I mean, if they win out for the rest of the season, I have a feeling they could win the Supporter Shield. And if you imagine that was the case just about a couple of months ago when they were sitting in 10th place and everything was falling apart for this team, what a turnaround Dean Smith side has had. But again, this is not going to be easy because they're facing against an NYCFC side that, for whatever reason, when they do face against tough opponent and when there's records that is about to be broken, they're going to be the one that is trying to avoid the record being broken at home. But moving on, in the next match is the Philadelphia Union versus New England. So the good news for the Union is that they do get a little bit of an easier game after losing in the semifinal in the U.S. Open Cup as they get to face against a New England side that are pretty close to getting eliminated. 8-8-14 is the record. Though I will say that this is a New England side that will be having an interim head coach. So yeah, anytime when you have an interim head coach, we'll see whether or not if there's maybe a new interim head coach boost coming into this game against the Union. I mean, that's got to be frustrating if you're a Union fan. You were hoping you get an easier game against New England, and yet now you have to face against a team that has an interim head coach. And usually, when teams have an interim head coach in the first game, more times or not, the team usually respond very well because a lot of these players want to impress their new interim head coach. But nevertheless, this game starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. The Union 17-6-7, still currently at the top of the Supporter Shield standing, whereas New England, as I mentioned, 8-8-14. Head-to-head meeting 26-9-10 in favor of the Philadelphia Union. So the Union has definitely done well against New England in terms of the all-time meeting, and we'll see whether or not that is going to be the case. I mean, it's been a rough last couple of days if you're a Union fan. First losing 7-0 to Vancouver, and then follow up by losing 3-1 in the semifinal of the U.S. Open Cup to Nashville. Yeah, they definitely do to try to get a win, to try to hold themselves in terms of the Supporter Shield race. Now, moving on, speaking of a team that is also in the Supporter Shield race, and that, of course, is San Diego. But as I said, the warning sign, I think, is started to be there with San Diego with the fact that yes, I know they're still getting resort, and yes, they're still getting wins somehow, and Understar is just continue to go nuclear. But again, I've said this before with San Diego, and this is kind of some warning sign that they can't ignore. They need to figure out another player that can score the goals besides Anders Dwyer, and need to at least put some pressure off of him, because it's getting to a point where you don't want to be like a one man show. And I know Understar is almost impossible to stop, but the goal scoring, it is a huge concern, I would say, with San Diego, with the way that they haven't been scoring a lot of goals in the last couple of games. That's going to be something that they'll need to try to rectify as the playoffs is about to begin. Now, the good news is they have a chance to definitely score some goals against this Atlanta team that pretty much is already checked out. 5-11-13 is the record. Surprisingly, Ronnie Delia is still here, and I think the only reason why he's still there is because that near comeback that they had against Columbus might have just kind of saved his job for just a little bit. Although it's kind of inevitable the fact that he probably might be let go by the end of the season. But this game starts at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. This, of course, is the first ever meeting between both of these teams, because anytime when San Diego play against an Eastern Conference team, it is the first ever meeting. Now, moving on, we got Columbus versus Toronto. So this is a game that Columbus desperately needed. I mean, things are falling apart for Columbus, both on the injury department and also their defense as well. 13-10-7 is their record, whereas Toronto 5-11-13 is their record. And to tell you how that defense has fallen apart for Columbus, they have gave up 7 goals in the last 2 games. Yikes, that is not good. But this, of course, is the first of only 4 games that start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Head-to-head meeting 15, 10, and 12 in favor of Columbus. And as I mentioned, Toronto has already been eliminated. But one thing about this Toronto side is that, as I said throughout the season, this is a team that just don't look at their record and mistake the fact that it's going to be a walkover. TFC has played hard in every single games that they have played, really going back to June, and they have made some contender their life hard with the way that they of course play, and with the way that Columbus has really struggled lately, especially on the defensive end. Yeah, I mean, this is a game that they probably need to score some goals relatively quick. If they can score some goals relatively quick, TFC is a team that doesn't really have that kind of goal scoring threat. But the longer, I feel like, if this game stay at 0-0 or even a low scoring game, the more you got to be concerned if you're Columbus, because as I said, this team simply cannot defend like lately. And again, part of that maybe is due to the fact that the injury crisis has really hit this defense hard in the last couple of games. Now, moving on, we got Miami versus DC United. So Miami 14-7-6, whereas DC is 5-10-15. On paper, this looks like a complete mismatch. But in terms of the head-to-head meeting, DC still has the head-to-head meeting over Miami. 4-3-3 is their record. And I say it's a mismatch, but the last time both of these teams play against each other, DC was able to get a draw against Inter Miami. Now, that being said, that was a game where Miami didn't start most of their starters, and there was no Messi in that game. I'm pretty sure that when they do get their strongest team in this one against DC, I'm pretty sure this will be a different story, especially with the way that for Inter Miami, they definitely play angry in the game against Seattle, and try to once again kind of block those doubters, the fact that they can't perform in big games and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll see whether or not they continue that, and the fact that, I mean, I feel like they should be, because like, again, this DC team, they look like they're down. Now they're already in CU next season mode, and they've been in CU next season mode probably the longest out of any team so far in MLS. Now, moving on, we got Montreal versus the New York Red Bulls. So, speaking of another team that's kind of in CU next season mode, that's kind of the case with Montreal in the midst of this rebuild. But this is a game for the Red Bulls. It's an absolute must win. I mean, we talked about before the Red Bulls with the way that their playoff streak is really in serious jeopardy this season. And the big part of the reason why it's in serious jeopardy, they cannot win road games. They've only won once this season on the road. They keep losing road games. They're not getting the points that they need on the road. And I said this before: if they want to keep that streak alive somehow, they have to win at least 1 or 2 road games. And this is probably the best opportunity to do so, because Montreal this season, for the most part, they have not done well whatsoever at home. But the Red Bulls have an 11-7-12 record. All-time meeting 15-5-13 in favor of the New York Red Bulls. And like I said, for the Red Bulls, they need to win this one. If they do not win this one against Montreal, I mean, I think you can kind of say that they're done in terms of the playoffs. I mean, I know they're still within touching distance of Chicago, but remember, Chicago does have a game in hand, and it's a 2 point gap as well. And if Chicago somehow win that game in hand, then all of a sudden it's a 5 point gap, and with just so little game left in the season, barring the fact that Chicago doesn't have their usual September meltdown, yeah, the Red Bulls they're just they need to not only win some road games, but getting to a point where they maybe need to start to win out the rest of the games to keep that streak alive, and also hope that they can rely help on teams facing against Chicago, so somehow they can sneak themselves into ninth place in the standings. Now, moving on, we got Orlando versus Nashville SC, and this is the last team that Orlando City wants to face right now. I mean, you definitely do not want to face Nashville right now. Nashville seems like they're starting to kick into gear again, especially following off that U.S. Open Cup semifinal win. Now, I will say this, after you get a big win like that, there could be a bit of a letdown for Nashville, and I'll say the same thing about Austin when we'll get to talk about them in just a bit. But yeah, Orlando City, they are really struggling lately. I mean, it's almost like ever since that big five 1 win against Inter Miami, it's just feel like that was kind of the peak for them, and ever since that, it's been kind of downhill for them. 13-9-7 is their record. Nashville is 15-5 and 10. In terms of the all-time meeting, 6-5-5 in favor of Orlando City. So yeah, for Orlando, they desperately need a win. And facing against a Nashville side that, like I said, they have a lot of confidence coming into this game, but we'll see whether or not will they be up for it in this one, because anytime when you were able to get a big victory in the middle of the week, a club defining victory on the middle of the week of them going to their first ever U.S. Open Cup final. We'll see whether or not the mentality is going to be still there for this natural side, especially they have to go on the road here. Unlike what I'll talk about with Austin, they get to, of course, play at home. Well, moving on to the 8:30 p.m. Eastern start, and talk about one of the team that got eliminated and lost in the semifinal, and the team that I was there to watch that game. And yeah, you know, as painful as that loss is, it just feels like now things got even worse for Minnesota, because after that heartbreaking loss that they had against Austin, giving up a 120-minute winner to CJ Foldry, now we have heard that Carlos Harvey and Kevin Yoboa are both out for the season. So yeah, it just doesn't get any worse for this team. And those two guys, Carlos Harvey is a big miss for this team, especially on the defensive end. Well, I will say he will be a miss, but I think so far, because of the fact that the Loons are very deep on the defensive front, I think they can afford to have him miss time, and especially out for the season, and that won't damage the defense as much as I think it should be. But Calvin Yobel out at the for the season at that number 9 position, that is a huge loss. And even though I know he hasn't been in the best form lately, the fact that this team now all of a sudden doesn't have a number 9, well, they do with Madu Dian being the number 9 there, but unless if he has a Tani Oluwaseyi kind of ascending straight away, now starting in that spot game in and game out, there is a huge question mark in the number 9 position, and I would have never thought that would be a discussion we would have had, especially with the way that throughout the season that number 9 position, it's almost kind of like a debate of should we see Yaboa or Tani starting together, or one of them starting together. And I also have heard the fact that there are some Loons fans that are very frustrated with the front office selling Tani. At the end of the day, it was the right decision. I understand the frustration, certainly. The fact that, losing your best player in the middle of the season, that obviously sucked. But at the end of the day, that's just kind of the business of MLS. And if you want to be a team that will started to develop young talent and sell them for a huge amount of sum, and have that kind of DNA in your team, Minnesota's gonna have to do that. You have to show that you can develop some young talent and able to sell them, because if you do that, then now you have that reputation that you can, of course, do so, and there's going to be chances in the future where you're going to make profits out of that as well. And again, overall, I think it was the right decision, even though it is kind of painful to see, and now even more painful to see because of the way that this team doesn't have a number 9 right now, besides the one that they, of course, got over this summer, who hasn't really played a lot of minutes so far this season. And to make things even more interesting, they're playing at home against the Chicago Fire. Now, normally when you I say a team playing at home, that should not be a problem, but it's a problem this season for Minnesota. It's been a problem for this team these last couple of years. They just have not been doing well at Allianz Field whatsoever, and yeah, I mean this is, and Chicago will want some revenge too, because remember, one of the team that Minnesota knocked out in the Open Cup was the Chicago Fire. They knocked them out in the quarterfinal as well, and Chicago haven't forgot about that, and especially the fact that Chicago is also in the midst of this playoff race as well, and are trying to avoid not to have their usual September collapse that we usually see nowadays. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 4-1-3 in favor of Minnesota. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. This I think will really now test the mentality of this team. I mean, throughout the season, I know the Loons have overcome a lot of adversity, but this is now the toughest this task. Losing in the semifinal in the most heartbreaking way you can imagine in the middle of the week, and now you lose two very key players to season-ending injury. Yeah, everything is going the wrong way for this team, and now we'll see whether or not if this team has that mentality and had that next man up kind of mentality to overcome that against a really good opponent in Chicago this season. Now, moving on, we got Sporting KC versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. So Sporting KC, they are very close of getting eliminated. In fact, I think if they lose this game and if the Quake Stars win, I think they're officially eliminated with a 7-6-17 record, and they're pretty much now joining the CU next season crowd right now. But Vancouver have a 15-7-6 record. They're trying to chase down the top spot in the Western Conference. In fact, I think they actually control their own destiny once again in terms of trying to get that first spot, and are right back in the thick of things in terms of the Supporter Shield race, because when you look at the games in hand that they have a couple of games in hand over the team above them. But in terms of head to head, 13-6-11 in favor of Sporting KC, and with the way that Vancouver has been playing relatively well. I mean, after putting seven past the Union, that was absolutely impressive for them, and I'll be surprised if Jasper Stores. And especially the other thing, I think why Vancouver started getting much better, besides the Thomas Mullis signing, is the fact that they're starting getting healthy again. When they're starting to get healthy again, you can clearly see that this is an absolute juggernaut, and not to mention with the way that they're not playing every 3 games in 7 days as they pretty much did. That really tired out the team. It feels like there's new energy with this team, and do not be surprised that Jasper Sorensen's side, when the playoffs is about to start, this team is going to go on a hot run, and this is going to be a team that is going to be a problem for a lot of teams in the Western Conference. Now, moving on, we got the Houston Dynamo versus the Portland Timbers. So, as bad as things have gone for the Dynamo, they're kind of heading the wrong direction. They're still in the race of the playoffs. They're only 2 points out of it, albeit some teams above them do have a couple of games in hand over them. They have an 8-9-13 record. The Timbers, at least they find themselves in a little bit more comfortable spot in terms of the playoffs, but they've been very inconsistent lately. 11-9-9 is the record. In terms of the head-to-head meeting, it's kind of interesting. It's the same record as the Portland Timbers as well. And did I also mention there's also 4 games that's happened at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. So yeah, there's gonna be a chance that there's gonna be 8 games that's gonna happen at the same time. Yeah, that's gonna be very interesting to try to keep track of every single game during that time. But yeah, in this one for the Dynamo, they desperately need a win if they want to keep themselves in the playoff race, and especially at home too. They need to get home points. The home form has not been great for the Dynamo this season, and if they can't win more games at home and kind of have to almost rely on the road form a little bit more, it feels like this team might be out of the playoffs race relatively soon, and especially facing against the Timbers side that the Timbers are kind of a weird team lately. There's been times where they have shown their ability, and then there's times where you just kind of wonder, yeah, why is this team is still in the playoff race? They're very inconsistent, at least in the past month or so. Now, moving on to another team that is really in the thick of things of the playoff race, and that, of course, is FC Dallas. 8-10-11 is the record, whereas Colorado is 8-11-6-13. Now, Dallas doesn't actually control their own destiny, but they're actually tied with RSL right now in terms of being in the 10 spot, and that's the first team that is out of the playoffs as well. But keep in mind, technically RSL control their own destiny because RSL does have a game in hand, and it will be enough for them to for RSL to overtake the Quakes if they do win that game in hand. But Dallas is not that far away, and Dallas have been playing much better in the last couple of games. Really, I think ever since they got over that summer swoon period, they have definitely done much better. Now they're gonna play against a Rapids side that, as I said about the Colorado Rapids this season, you just don't know what kind of team will show up. Man, I talk about the Timbers being inconsistent. Colorado Rapids is the definition of inconsistent. It just you get one day where the Colorado Rapids look like a world beater and look like a dark horse, and then you get another game where they just look completely lost and doesn't look like a team that is a contender. But in terms of head-to-head meeting, 14, 12, and 13 in favor of Colorado. So yeah, we'll see which version of Colorado will show up. Dallas will be hoping it's the bad version of Colorado that shows up, because if they can win this one, and especially with the way that RSL, who's right above them, have a much tougher for a game, there could be a chance they can get themselves into to 10th position and a chance to now control their own destiny of making the playoffs as well, which that feels like it was unreachable back in July when this team was just completely falling apart under Peter Quill. Now, speaking of the San Jose Earthquakes, so they play against St. Louis, and I cannot believe that they're still above the red line right now. Of all the things I've said that has frustrated me with the Quakes, it is almost a Houdini act, the fact that they're still above the red line. Now, that being said, they don't control their own destiny, and that they do still have a bit of a tough schedule to play for the remaining part. But this is probably the easiest game that they have against St. Louis. And this is a game, I talk about the New York Red Bulls need a must win game against Montreal. I will say the same thing about the Quakes. They absolutely have to win this game against St. Louis. And it's not going to be easy, because St. Louis has been the one team that the Quakes have not figured out whatsoever in the five meeting. In the five meeting between them and St. Louis have won all five of them. And not even one of them ended in a draw as well, and that included earlier this season when St. Louis was able to beat the Quakes down in St. Louis. So yeah, again, not easy to say that you're facing a team that is in a must-win territory when you're facing against a team that is also kind of playing for their playoff life. I think St. Louis is also very close to getting eliminated as well. If not, they're already eliminated. But still, they're gonna play the spoiler row, and I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a lot of team that is below the Quakes are rooting for St. Louis to win this one. And like I said, those teams have a good chance to do so, because, like I said, St. Louis undefeated against the Quakes. The Quakes need to win this one. I mean, I swear, if they do not win this one, I mean, I've already said in the LAFC game, I'm losing faith that this team is going to make the playoffs. I'm getting to a point where I'm pretty much going to completely lose faith. They lose to St. Louis in this one, even if somehow they find their way still above the red line by the end of this match week with a loss against St. Louis. I mean, if you cannot beat St. Louis, who is already in see you next season mode, what are the chances when they do face against some good opponent like San Diego and Vancouver remaining in their schedule? Like that's just like there's just no chance that of course the case. And oh, by the way, those two teams that I mentioned, San Diego and San Diego and Vancouver, that the Quakes have to play, both of them are on the road. So yeah, that's why I've said that this is a must win game, and that's why I also said that yeah, this if they don't win this one, I just don't see them making the playoffs, especially with those two really tough team and two teams that are like literally at the top of the Western Conference that they have to face on the road. Now, moving on, we got the Galaxy versus FC Cincinnati. So the Galaxy is one of the team that is pretty much falling in the end of the season. I don't think they're eliminated yet, the Galaxy, which is kind of a surprising thing to say. I mean, I might be wrong though. Let me just to double check in terms of the standings right now. I mean, I don't think there's again last week. It's hard to believe, but we only had like one team that I think got eliminated. Well, actually, Atlanta also got eliminated as well. Yeah, the Galaxy are somehow still alive in the standings. I mean, nobody has been eliminated in the Western Conference. That is despite the fact that there are some teams that have a lot of low points total, and if this was the Eastern Conference, a lot of those Western Conference teams would have been long eliminated from now on. Now that being said, it's pretty much on point that they're probably going to get eliminated in this game, because they get faced against Cincinnati in this one. Cincinnati is a very good team on the road, as we all know. know it. And the Galaxy, you talk about them phoning the season. They're pretty much playing a Ventura County team for the rest of the season. A lot of young players playing this team. It makes sense because you want to give some of the young kids a chance now that you don't have anything left to play for. So yeah, for Cincinnati, it's a good chance for them to capitalize on that opportunity. But in terms of the head-to-head matchup, it's hard to believe this is only the second meeting between both of these teams. Cincinnati has been in the league for a while, and it's hard to believe that both of these teams have only met once since Cincinnati came into the league back in 2018. That is. Now, moving on into the Sunday games that is. We got two Sunday game with the Sunday night soccer game being Austin and the Seattle Sounders. So I'm gonna say the same thing I said about Nashville that I'll say about Austin. The fact that after that big victory that they had, a club defining victory that they had against Nashville, how will they respond now that they have to play at home against the Seattle Sounders? And I would say Austin probably will still feel that adrenaline rush and that great period compared to Nashville, because the Nashville win against the Union, that was pretty convincing win as well. Austin literally had to wait until the 120 minute to get that huge winner, and with those kind of victory, I mean that's kind of victory that not only will be celebrated for a while, but it's kind of hard to try to come into the next game and basically not only show that same intensity, but also the fact that when you play that minutes in the middle of the week, it's hard to just have a quick turnaround and stay the same. And by the way, that is another thing I didn't say about Minnesota as well. Like Minnesota is literally in the worst case scenario of them playing so much minutes and come out of heartbreaking loss, and having players done for the season in that game as well. Yeah, for Austin, it's kind of the best case scenario, but at the same time, it kind of isn't, because now they may have to pay the price, being a little sluggish coming into this game against a Sounders team that I will say the thing about Seattle is that Seattle is not going to be that rested in this one as well. They had to go on the road, cross to the other side of the country to play against Miami, and we talk about how when you play across the other side of the country on a short rest, and the fact that this is also the third game in 7 days for both of these teams, so this will definitely be a game where I would say fitness level is going to really be tested. We'll see who is going to be the more fresher side in this one, because I'm pretty sure both of these teams are going to be pretty tired coming into this one, and hence I think that's kind of the reason why MLS decided to do the favorite of making this game a day later. Because imagine this game play on Saturday, man, that the the fatigue level is going to be through the roof in terms of not being there, and it's also going to be interesting to see will we see that intensity, because when you have two tired team face against each other, I mean, don't expect this is going to be an entertaining game. If you uh, tune into this game and hope that there was going to be goals and entertainment, yeah, this is probably not going to be the game to do so. A lot of Austin game this season has been low scoring, especially at home. So yeah, we'll see whether or not if this might be one of those boring kind of game where maybe one goal might be the difference between both of these teams. Now, moving on, we got LAFC versus RSL to finish the end of match week number 35. And if you heard this meeting before, yes, this was the meeting that happened just a couple of days ago. It's a rematch in this one. Very rare that we see a type of kind of situation where both teams play against each other in a span of 3 days. I mean, this is not the MLB after all, is it? Or even the NBA or NHL, where you play against the same team in such a short amount of period. But here we are in this one. It's a rematch, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific is the start. 13-8-7 is LAFC. RSL is 10-4 and 15. LAFC has a 14-1-4 record in favor of RSL. LAFC has really did a lot of ownage over RSL in recent year, and they have a chance to try to do it again in this one, because yeah, Sonny Min, he's probably going to be licking his chops again in this one after that incredible showing in Salt Lake over the week, scoring that hat trick. I'm pretty sure he is definitely going to be excited to play against the same team in such a short amount of period, and especially the fact that for RSL missing their most important number 9 because of a silly red card that we saw in the last game as well. That's a huge loss for this RSL team, and for a team that, again, they can't use this game as kind of like a throwaway game. They're in the midst of the playoff race. They're literally right there in the center of it. They need to muster something to try to get themselves a win. And RSL is kind of another team that is kind of another team that even though they're right there in terms of the playoffs and they still control their own destiny, it feels like they're heading the wrong direction, just like Houston as well. That it's almost like they don't want to make it to the playoffs with some of these losses that they suffer. This is why the Western Conference race this season is just so chaotic, and the fact that and this is also kind of the reason why somehow in some way the San Jose Earthquakes are still above the red line, because it just feels like every team in the West that's in the playoff race are just keep stumbling against each other, and it just almost getting to a point where somebody's gonna not only get that ninth spot eventually, but whoever gets that ninth spot, they probably get there not because they fought hard for it, but they probably just kind of stumble their way because the rest of the team in the playoff race just aren't able to gain traction enough to try to get that ninth position away. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at these 15 games for match week number 35. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games, and let me know in the comments below your prediction for all 15 of these games happening on match week number 35. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.